So in the yesterday's session, we have discussed about hydro energy, right? So how from water electricity is generated. This is what we have discussed in the last class, and we have discussed the policies associated with it, and we have discussed what is the mechanism involved, and we have also discussed advantages and challenges, and we have discussed about India potential when it comes to generation of hydro electricity, right? And now we are going to discuss about wind energy, right? So obviously this is one of the renewable energy resource, right? So we're going to study everything about wind energy today other than policies. So the policies we are going to discuss tomorrow. The policies we are going to discuss tomorrow. We'll be studying the mechanism involved, and we'll be studying about what are the different types of wind energy, and we will be discussing about what are the plans which are really important for us to understand or to study for UPSC. All these areas we'll be covering today, and after the end of this session we will be discussing the MCQs, right, for the prelims. So this is what we're going to discuss today. So the first one, what is wind? Right, we already know what the wind is because we have finished with the geography part. Because we have finished with the geography part, we are very familiar what a wind is. Wind is nothing but air in motion, right? Air which is actually moving is called wind. And why does air move? That too we have already studied in geography, and we have studied in climatology, right? So why does the wind move? The wind moves because of pressure differences, right? So why does the pressure difference occurs? Because of differential insulation, right? So because on the earth the sunlight is reaching differently in different places, right? It is heating different places differently, and whatever the air that is actually present in different places, that is being heated up differently, which is resulting in pressure differences, and everything in the air, right? The particles in the air, the molecules in the air, the gases, which we say, the gases move from the higher pressure region to the lower pressure region. All the gases move from the higher pressure region to the low pressure region, and we have different pressure belts. We have already discussed these, the higher pressure belt regions and the low pressure belt regions, when it comes to geography part, right? So this is the equator, 0 degrees latitude. So obviously here the temperature is high. So when the temperature is high, the pressure will be low, right? Temperature and pressure are inversely proportional. Temperature and pressure are inversely proportional. So because there is a high amount of insolation at latitude, 0 degree latitude, the pressure will be very less. We call it equatorial low. Equatorial lows. We call this equatorial lows. And we know 5 degrees above the equator and 5 degrees below the equator, we call it intertropical convergence zone. Intertropical convergence zone, where the easterlies, the northern easterlies and the southern easterlies actually merge at the intertropical convergence zone, right? So as we move towards the higher latitudes, gradually temperature varies, right? So obviously we have subtropical high pressure belt regions, right? We have subtropical high pressure belt regions as you go to the higher latitudes, about 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south, right? Subtropical high, right? And we have subpolar lows, right? And finally, polar highs. So alternatively, we have the high pressure belt regions and the low pressure belt regions, and the air moves from the high pressure belt region to the low pressure belt region, causing winds. And we name those winds in a different way, right? We have named them westerlies, we have named them easterlies, the trade winds, right? The jet streams. So we named them differently depending upon their features. That all we have studied in the geography, right? Now we are very clear that the wind is perpetual. The wind is perpetual so long there is sunlight. So long there is sunlight, so long there is inclined axis, right? And this difference of insulation is because of inclined axis. Inclined axis. What is the inclination? 23.5 degrees inclination. And because of this inclination, we have differential heating at different places. And because of the differential heating, we have different pressure belts. And because of the different pressure belts, we have wind movement. So this concept is very clear for us, right? So the wind is mainly formed due to Earth's rotation, right? So wind is mainly formed because of Earth's rotation. The Earth is moving from the west to east direction. So obviously the winds are the resultant of Earth's rotation and uneven heating of Earth's surface by sun rays, right? So obviously whenever something is moving in one direction, as we have the Newton's laws, so obviously if one force is acting in one direction, the other force acts in the other direction, right? So because of the Earth's rotation, we have the winds. And other than that, because of uneven heating of Earth's surface by the sun rays, because of these two factors, we have winds. And sun rays covers a much greater area at the equator rather than in the poles. We know that. So we already discussed this point few days before, that biodiversity is high between the tropics. And also when we discussed about solar energy, we discussed the potential of solar energy is high between tropics. We discussed the solar energy is huge. The potential of solar energy is very high between the tropics. And we discussed the same point when we discussed about International Solar Alliance. When we discussed about International Solar Alliance, we discussed there are about 121 countries participating for the International Solar Alliance. And which countries are participating in the International Solar Alliance? The countries which are partially or totally between the tropics. The countries which are partially or totally. When it comes to India, it is partially between the tropics, right? Because the Tropic of Cancer is passing across India, and it is dividing the India into two different geographical regions. We have the temperate regions in the north and we have the tropical regions in the south, right? So we discussed everything about that. So there is no explanation needed for this part, that the sunlight is greater between the tropics, and you move higher latitudes, it becomes reduced. And the hot air rises from the equator and expands towards the poles that cause winds. We know that, right? So if you consider this a surface, because of sunlight, the air near the ground heats up, and whenever the air heats up, it becomes less dense. The hot air is always lesser dense, and the air reaches onto the top, right? So this causes low pressure belt, right? Whenever it reaches the drops, reaches onto the higher higher altitudes, obviously, where will this air go? It will try to reach the poles, because the poles have ultimately higher pressure, right? So this is how the air circulates. This is how the air circulates. The hot air rises up and tries to move towards the poles, and then it cools down and comes down, and again this air comes to the equator. So this is how the air gets circulated, right? Because of differential heating. Okay, so I'll repeat it again. The wind is air in motion. And why the air is moving? It is moving because of two factors. The first one is the Earth's rotation, and the next one is uneven heating, right? Differential heating, right? And the sun rays covers much greater area at the equator rather than that of the poles, because at the poles for 6 months there won't be even any sunlight, right? It will be in the shadow region. And the hot air rises from the equator and expands towards the poles, which causes winds, right? So the previously we discussed about the cells, right? The polar cells and the Hartley cells, which are very much important, and the concept associated with it is very much important. We discussed it. Next one, we are using the same wind, right? The wind is nothing but the motion of air, which is mechanical, right? So we are using that motion of wind, and we are trying to generate secondary energy source, which we call electricity, right? Can we generate only the electricity? Definitely no, right? So we'll use the wind for the for mechanically pumping water, right? The previously when we look back, so obviously the water is actually drawn from the earth using the windmills. So the wind energy is not just used for the production of electricity, it is also used for pumping water. And wind energy can be converted into electrical energy by wind turbines, right? This is important. What is the principle associated with conversion of wind energy into the electrical energy? So we use wind turbines which have different blades of different dimensions. So when the turbines rotate, so that mechanical energy will be used for the generation of electricity. That is the fundamental principle that is used for the generation of wind energy or generation of electricity. A wind turbine, what is a wind turbine? A wind turbine is a system which transforms the kinetic energy available in the wind into mechanical or electrical energy that can be harnessed for any required applications, right? Whatever the purpose that may be, whatever the requirement the humanity might have, right? So what we are doing, so with the use of wind turbines, so when they are rotating, because of the wind movement, whenever they are rotating, we are using the kinetic energy, because the kinetic energy is present in everything that moves. Kinetic energy is present in everything that moves. So anything which is actually stable, that has potential energy. Anything which is actually stable, and anything which is actually stable at a particular height, so it has potential energy. Whenever it is actually moving, the potential energy is transformed into kinetic energy, and we are using that kinetic energy to rotate the turbines, right? And we are using that rotation of the turbines for the mechanical purposes or for electrical purposes. The mechanical purposes we said for the generation, for drawing water, and electrical energy for varied applications, right? So this is about the wind turbine. And the mechanical energy is most commonly used for pumping water. We already discussed it. And wind electrical turbines generate electricity that can be utilized locally or transported through the desired location through the grid. We know what the grid is, right? We very well established what is the advantage of grid system. And we have also discussed, if you are connected through the grid, how can you earn additional income through the net metering, right? For the people who were absent in the previous classes, I would like to explain the net metering again. So we have the electricity in two different forms, grid system and non-grid system. We have grid and non-grid system. So when you're talking about the grid, you're directly connected to the discoms. Even though you're using renewable source of energy, either solar or wind or biomass or whichever the form of energy that may be, so you're generating electricity out of it, and that electricity will be connected to the discoms. Discom is nothing but distribution companies which will be distributing the electricity to the households, right? A discom may be government owned or the privately owned. Discom may be government owned or private owned, right? You're connected to the grid. So if there are any fluctuations in the generation of renewable energy, you can draw electricity through the grid from the government or from the distribution companies. So that is the advantage. So there won't be any power fluctuations during the lean periods of time, right? And whenever you are producing excess amount of renewable energy, you can directly supply to discoms so that discom will actually pay you. So we are monitoring it by net metering method. Net metering. So we'll have a meter and which will actually rotate and which will actually charge you if you're using any electricity from the discoms. And whenever you're supplying excess amount of energy to the distribution companies, then it will rotate back. Ultimately, the net usage, depending upon the net usage, either you will be charged the money or you will be given the money by the discoms. So that is the benefit of connecting to the grid, right? So we already discussed what are the disadvantages of connecting to the grid, right? You cannot be completely green. It doesn't mean that you will be Hulk, right? So what do you mean by you will not be completely green? When you're connected through the grid, so the most amount of the grid energy is produced by burning coal. So you will not be completely using renewable energy. You will not be completely green. You will not be completely depending on the green energy. That is one of the disadvantages for the going for the grid energy. So if you really want to solely go for the non-grid and you do not want to utilize any of the carbon source, so then you can go for the non-grid electricity, where the non-grid electricity is mostly useful for the isolated villages or isolated areas where the grid connection might not be possible in the future few years, right? There we will go for the non-grid electricity, right? Because if there is any village in the Himalayan terrains or in a difficult terrain where the grid connectivity is very difficult, so in those areas you will go for the non-grid electricity, right? And so what do you have in this wind turbine? So this is also we have to know. So I have drawn these three things here. So what are they called? They are called blades. Blades which will be rotating. The blades which will be rotating. The blade is a rotating component designed aerodynamically, right? Aerodynamically to work on the principle of lift and drag to convert kinetic energy into mechanical energy, right? This is important because whatever the thing you are generating for the movement, so obviously it has to be designed aerodynamically. It should not have greater resistance. If it has greater resistance, you will not get enough the mechanical energy. It will not move properly. So it has to be aerodynamically designed in such a way that there will be lift and drag. What do you mean by lift and drag? So whenever the air is actually moving through the windmill, so obviously it will have to lift the wing, lift the blade, right? And the lift is something which acts perpendicular to the blade. The force which is acting perpendicular to the blade is called the lift force, and the force which is actually moving along the blade is called the drag force, right? You will see it here, right? If this is the blade which you have designed, right? So the wind movement is in this direction. So if the wind movement is in direction, the force which is acting perpendicularly to the flow of the wind perpendicularly to the flow of the wind, it is called the lift force. And the wind which is actually present along the direction of the wind is called the drag force, right? It works on the principle of lift and drag. Ultimately, the resultant force will be in this direction where the wind, where the blade actually moves, where the blade actually goes for rotatory motion, the mechanical motion, right? So what are these two forces? The lift force and the drag force. The lift force and the drag force. What is the lift force? The lift force acts perpendicular to the flow of the wind, which is caused by pressure difference between either side of the blade, right? Because there is a pressure difference. So when you see the blade like this, so the wind is moving like this, right? So there will be a more pressure acting on the lower side of the blade, right? There is high pressure here and there is low pressure here. There is high pressure here and there is low pressure here. So obviously the wind moves from the from the low pressure to the high area, but the thrust which is actually resulting on the blade is really high, right? So it makes the blade move, right? It makes the blade move, and this is the principle by which the aeroplanes are actually flying, right? This is the principle by which the aeroplanes are actually flying. Okay, the lift and the drag force. And what is the drag force? The force acting along the direction of the blade. The force acting along the direction of the blade is called the drag force, right? These are the two fundamental forces which are actually making the blades to rotate, to go for a mechanical motion. And from the mechanical motion that is generated, we are converting that mechanical energy into electrical energy using generators, right? We already discussed the generators and motors. The generators are the ones which creates the electrical energy, which generates electrical energy from mechanical, and the motors are the ones which creates mechanical energy with the use of electrical energy, right? And depending on the design of the blades and the wind turbines, either drag or the lift force move the blades depending upon the design. The most of the turbines use the principle of lift rather than drag, right? Most of the turbines use the principle of lift rather than drag. This is not so important for UPSC, but for a fundamental understanding of how actually the blades rotate. And we have to know about the potential of wind energy. We have to know about the potential of wind energy, right? So what is this potential of wind energy? Please do remember the potential areas of wind energy, because whenever they ask a question on wind energy, you have to draw India diagram. We have to draw India map, and you just mark the areas, right? You just mark the areas where there is a huge potential of wind energy. For that matter, you will have to know where are the areas where there is a huge amount of wind energy, right? Where there is a huge potential for the generation of wind energy, right? Please do remember this, right? So we have the Jammu and Kashmir region, the Himalayan region, terrain, where there are the winds which are flowing perpetually. And we have the Gujarat region, and we have the Deccan Plateau, in the Deccan Plateau, right? Here. And finally, near the Kanyakumari. So along the west coast, right? Along the west coast, we have huge potential of the wind generation, wind energy generation. Please do remember this. Along the west coast, we have huge amount of wind potential, wind energy potential, right? So the wind energy can be generated by two ways. Wind energy can be generated by two different ways. We call it onshore and offshore, right? Onshore and offshore. What is this onshore and offshore? The onshore means if this is a coastal region, so we will be generating within the shore, that is onshore. And if you are moving into the waters, and if you are establishing the windmills there, that is offshore, right?
So once again,
Yeah. So if there is, I'll take the wind, I'll take this map into the consideration, right? If you are constructing windmills along the coast on the land, we call it onshore, on shore, right? If you are going for windmills in the sea, we call it offshore, onshore and offshore, right? So why we are constructing windmills only on the shores? This is one point which we have to understand. Why along the shores? Either it can be on the land or in the waters. Why only across the shore? Why not within the interiors of India? Why we are ignoring huge area where you can actually establish a windmill, right? Why only on the shores? Because only on the shores, we can expect a greater amount of energy production, greater amount of wind energy and sustainable energy can be obtained only along the shores. So we have to understand why only along the shores, because of fundamental principle, differential heating between land and sea. Because of the differential heating between land and sea, so there is always a continuous movement of the winds along the shore, to and fro. In the daytime, if this is land and this is water, if this is land and this is water, the daytime, when there is insolation, when there is insolation, land land heats up easily. During the daytime, land heats up easily compared to that of the water. So because the land heats up easily, on the land there will be low pressure. On the land there will be low pressure. In the water there will be high pressure. So obviously during the daytime, because of this differential heating between land and water, the wind moves from high pressure to the from the high pressure area to the low pressure area, right? So there is movement of air. There is movement of air because of the differential heating. And during the night time, what is happening, right? The land, just a minute, I'll open one other slide, empty slide, and then I'll explain. Right? This is land and water. So during daytime and during night time, right? So during daytime, the land heats up easily. Land heats up easily, creating low pressure, right? During the daytime, the land heats up easily, creating low pressure here. Whereas for water, it is not easy to heat water up compared to that of the land, right? So because of this, you have relatively high pressure on the waters. We have relatively high pressure on the waters compared to that of the land during the daytime. So the wind moves from high pressure area to the low pressure area, right? Wind moves in this direction. right? So because the wind is actually present, so you can establish the windmills so that they can rotate and generate wind energy. They can generate wind energy. Either you can establish onshore or you can establish offshore, right? And during the night time, what is happening? During the night time, the land loses heat easily compared to that of the water. So relatively, the water takes long time to lose the heat. So the water will be warmer compared to that of the land. So there will be low pressure on the water, but on the land there will be high pressure. So in which direction the wind moves now? In this direction, right? So either you establish the windmills here or here. So obviously during the daytime and during the nighttime, there is a continuous movement of the wind. So we have greater chances of generating energy from the wind. But if you take the internal areas, you do not have that differences, right? You do not have the pressure differences within the interior of India, right? So that's why generator of wind energy rather than interiors. And also during the interiors, we have many constructions, right? We have big apartments. So obviously the wind will be obstructed, right? So you cannot harness the wind energy in the interiors of India, right? So that's why you go for either onshore or the offshore. Either you go for onshore or the offshore. Okay. This is onshore. This is offshore. Onshore and offshore. Hope you all understand. So I'll give you 5 minutes of time. If you have any questions, you can ask me now. Put down in the chat, put it in the chat box. If you have any questions so far.
So using that
yes,
windmills, how will you take out the water?
Using the windmills. You have you seen the hand pump, right? So what it is doing, it is rotating, right? So if you have something like this, you have the stopper here, stopper, you have a pump here. So obviously what is doing, it is moving like this, right, perpendicularly. So whenever you are pulling it, so whatever the pressure that is actually being created over here, it is moving the air up, right? And again it is going down and it is pulling it up, going down, pulling it up. So ultimately it will be drawing water. So this movement, the up and down movement in the pump, is actually mediated by the fan movement. So whenever the fan is rotating, we'll have this gear, right?
Yes.
For the gear, we'll attach it here at the edge. So it will be moving like this, right? Whenever it is moving like this, it will be going down and coming up.
Like piston.
So yes, piston. So because of the piston, it will be drawing water up.
So what they have to do with the windmills, sir? How it is connected to windmill?
The gears.
So high, sir.
Yeah, obviously. For drawing water, you will not actually put it that high. That is not required. Only the small one, because we have seen in multiple movies, right?
Yes.
Where the windmills are not that tall for drawing water, right? Until or unless it is so deep, until or unless it is desert, right? So obviously the wind table, the water table will be so deep. So for drawing water from that deep, obviously we have to use more amount of wind energy,
Yes,
right? So depending upon the water table, we have to establish the height, altitude. The same with the wind and the conversion of wind energy into electrical as well, right? So if you want to harness more amount of the wind energy, obviously you will have to increase the height, because the wind moves at a very faster speed at a higher altitudes, right? Jet streams, which are very fast, right? At higher altitudes, right? In the lower altitudes, because of many terrain differences or because of the construction activities, right? The wind movement will be very slow, right? So the Bengaluru, the winds will be really good, right? Because we are about 1 kilometer higher than the mean sea level, right? The altitude matters. And when you move above the Himalayas, obviously the winds will be so fast, right? So the height matters. And also with the height also, the blade dimensions also matters. The blade dimensions also matters. So depending upon the height and the blade dimensions, the potential of the wind energy that can be converted into electrical matters. Okay.
And there are more.
Yeah.
In deserts, the air will be passing very fastly, sir.
Yes.
And why are there no windmills in deserts?
No, we will be establishing. Have you seen, when you see this map over there? So there is huge amount of potential in the semi-arid and arid regions of Gujarat and Rajasthan. And desert in the sense we will not be establishing in the interiors of, that is useless again, right? Only in the shore we have to, right? Not in the interiors. Just because we have a huge desert, that doesn't mean that wind will be flowing continuously. No, only in one direction it will flow. And later that whenever the sunlight is not proper, right, the wind will not be generated that often. But when it comes to the shores, we are very sure, because of the differential heating, there is a continuous movement of air either towards this side or that side. So that's why only along the shores we'll establish the windmills. Okay. Yes, in hilly regions also we can install windmills, right, sir? Because of that reasons, movement of the wind is more. Yes. Yes, we can establish. So obviously here we have the Western Ghats, right? Along the Western Ghats we are installing the windmills. Sir, in water, nighttime or daytime air pressure will be high, then which more number energy we get, water or land, sir? The more energy, so you want to compare the amount of electricity that is generated on the daytime and the nighttime. It is very difficult to say. It is very difficult to say because it varies on the day-to-day basis. The main problem with the renewable energy resources is that it is not consistent because it is depending upon the weather of that particular place. So with the changes in the daily weather, the amount of electricity that can be generated varies, right? If it is too sunny, solar energy. If it is too windy, the wind energy. And that too, we cannot really guarantee wind energy will be more during the daytime and it will be less during the nighttime, or we cannot say the wind will be more in the nighttime and will be more in the daytime. We cannot really anticipate, right? So depending upon the weather, we can generate the renewable energy, but it is not consistent and we cannot really determine at what time it will be really high, during the nighttime or the daytime. Okay, Babu?
Sir.
Yeah, any other questions? Any other questions? So as I always say, if you do not have any questions, either you understood everything or you did not understand anything. And for any human, you cannot understand everything. So obviously you did not understand anything. Right?
Okay.
So because we have finished this doubt session and because you do not have any queries, so we'll go into the onshore and offshore again. Oh, you have a question. So answer to your question. Sorry, that is your question.
Grid and non-grid.
Where is it?
Grid and non-grid.
Did he?
Yes, sir.
Where?
Scroll up, sir. Short message.
Oh, grid and non-grid. Okay, 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 Vaishnavi. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, I will. I'll explain the grid and non-grid. So the Vaishnavi is talking about grid and non-grid, right? So when you're looking towards renewable energy sources for the generation of electricity, when you're looking for renewable energy sources for the generation of electricity, you do not have to depend upon fossil fuels. That is the basic funda, right? So you do not have to depend upon government for supplying electricity, right? So if you establish a solar panels above your home, or if you establish a windmill, or if you are trying to generate the electricity out of biomass, right? You do not have to depend on government. You do not need any wiring. You do not need any meter. You do not have to pay electricity bill to the government. You are generating the energy which is required for your home itself, right? So during those circumstances, so whatever the renewable energy that was created, right, that can be utilized two ways. Either you can connect to the grid. Grid is nothing but, this is grid actually, the network. The grid is nothing but network. So obviously when the electricity is generated in a conventional way, when you consider conventional way of generating electricity, we take an example of hydrothermal, right? Because we have huge amount of electricity that is being generated from hydrothermal itself, right? First thermal and other hydro. More amount of electricity is generated from hydrothermal electricity, right? So that was actually scaled up with high voltages. It is supplied to the discoms, right? Discoms will be purchasing electricity from the government, right? Distribution companies, and the distribution companies will be transmitting that electricity, right, through various places, right? And these are the homes, and it is transporting high voltage electricity to the homes. And here at the transformer, the voltage is reduced to 230 volts, right? We call it step up and step down. Right? Transformer, that is a function of a transformer, reducing the voltage or increasing the voltage of the electricity. So we require only 230 volts. So obviously it is step down, it is doing step down, reducing the voltage, and it is supplying to all the houses. So all the houses are connected through the grid, right? And the transformer is supplying electricity to all those houses. That is what connecting to the grid is. If the transformer is damaged, so all the houses connected through that grid will lose electricity, will not get any electricity. That is what grid connection means. But whenever there is a power cut, so what now people are doing? They have their own inverters, or if the scale is really high, they have generators, right? So inverters and generators, when you turn on an inverter or a generator, you will not be supplying electricity to all the houses, because it is non-grid. It is for you itself, not for others, right? When you turn on the inverter or a generator, it will supply electricity to your home itself. It will generate electricity to your home itself. That is called non-grid connected, right? You are not connected to the grid. You will not be supplying electricity to the other households. You will be utilizing electricity only within your home. That is non-grid. When you connected to the grid, so obviously through the grid, you will be supplying electricity to all the households, right? So that is the basic funda for grid and non-grid. So now we have to understand, so the renewable energy connected through the grid and non-grid, right? So if you are generating renewable energy, so if you are in a remote location within the hills, right, within the hills, so obviously supplying electricity to those remote locations through the grid, because from, if suppose if the place is around 600 kilometers away from the actual mainland, right? So from here you will have to supply electricity to 600 kilometers, and you have to connect it through the grid, and in between there is nothing. And if you're connected through the grid, one thing you have to remember, that there are huge transmission losses. There are huge transmission losses because the distance is really high. And because of the huge transmission losses, it is not feasible to give grid connection to those remote areas, because the electricity expenses will be really high. They'll have to bear the costs, right? So it is not feasible to supply electricity to that remote locations. So in those cases, with the use of solar or wind energy or hydel, right, or biomass, so we will be generating electricity in that particular location itself, and will be supplying to those houses itself, right? It is not connected to any of the discoms, to any of the surroundings. So that is called non-grid, right? So we are using renewable energy to supply electricity to the remotest villages, which cannot be connected through the grid in near future, right? So that is non-grid connected renewable energy, right? Even if you establish a solar panel in your house, you can choose non-grid. You can tell the government, I do not need your meter, I will not be taking any electricity from you, right? So you can generate whatever the electricity you want through the solar panels or wind or through the windmills or through any other source, right? You become independent of the government. You will not have to bear the price increases and the price decreases, the volatility of the electricity costs, because you're generating your own electricity. That is non-grid connected, right? But whenever there is cyclone effect, when you cannot see the sunlight, so obviously you will have less amount of energy. You will not have sufficient amount of solar energy, right? So sometimes you will not have sufficient amount of wind energy, right? So because of all these problems, there is an alternative you can choose. You can connect, even though you're using renewable energy, even you are generating your own electricity, you can connect that renewable energy through the grid, right? You can establish a meter from the government, right? You will have a specialized meter. You will have a specialized meter, and with the specialized meter, you will be connected to the discoms. You will be connected to the discoms. If you're connected to the discoms, sir, I'm generating electricity. If I connect to the discoms, what advantage do I have? That is the question, right? So whenever you're connected to the discoms, so the renewable energy you're producing, whatever the excess renewable energy you're producing, that excess renewable energy will be going to discoms, right? So whatever the unused, because we have a limited storage capacity, right? We cannot store entire solar energy that is generated. So whatever the excess solar energy that is generated, so through the grid connected, through the discoms, you will be supplying it to them. Because you're supplying it to the discoms, discom has to pay you, right? But whenever your renewable energy potential is less, right, than actually needed to you, you can draw electricity from the discoms. So there won't be any power fluctuations, right? Whenever you need, you are getting it from the discoms, and whenever you have access, you are supplying it to the discoms. So we'll be calculating the net amount, whether either it can be supplied or it was taken. Either it was supplied or taken. The net amount is calculated by net metering method. Net metering method. So obviously, when you have a meter, you might have seen it is rotating from the left to right, right? And the values increase, right? Whenever you're taking electricity from the discom, from the government, when you're taking electricity from the government or private enterprise, any discom, right? So the meter is rotating from the left to right and the values increase, right? So whenever you are supplying electricity to the government through the net metering method, you have renewable energy supply, right? So whenever you are supplying electricity to the government, it will rotate back again. So the value decreases. It will rotate back again. So ultimately, depending upon the net supply or net withdrawal, so either you will be paying it to the government or government will be paying it to you. So in that way, you can get additional revenues from the government.
So how they'll store energy in the discom, sir?
They will not store, they'll supply to the others. The entire thing is connected through the grid, right?
Yes, sir.
So whatever the electricity you are supplying, so the other person will be utilizing it, right? The other person will be utilizing
Sir,
it.
if in an area,
This-
if a cyclone hits, right, sir?
Yes,
Nobody will have electricity, right, sir?
yes.
Then what they will do, sir?
In that way, you will be, if you have electricity, that will be connected through the grid.
Borrowing
But
from
ultimately,
others.
if the transformer was down, so obviously there is no supply. There is no supply at whatsoever, but you will be having electricity if you have a storage capacity. And if you have a windmill during the cyclones, that is a pretty good wind energy, right?
Yes.
But solar energy, you might not get that potential during the cyclones because it is too cloudy, right? In one way or the other, you will be utilizing the solar energy or the wind energy. This is why we are talking about the hybrid renewable energy capacity, the wind and solar together,
Yes.
right? So that is grid connected and non-grid connected. Clear, Vaishnavi? Yes, good. Right? Now we are discussing onshore and offshore wind energy, right? So we have already discussed the principle why shore, why onshore and offshore. We have already discussed the principle why fundamentally we are looking only towards the shore rather than the inlands, right? So we'll see this. So what is the potential of energy for the onshore? What is the potential of wind energy for the offshore? The India has a potential of generating an estimate about 302 gigawatts of energy, 302 gigawatts of energy at a height of 100 meters through onshore wind farms as per the assessment of National Institute of Wind Energy, right? As per the assessment with the hub height in the sense windmill height, right? Altitude at 100 meters, you can generate 302 gigawatts of energy, right? So there are other assessments as well. So far, you can remember this one, right? So as per the National Institute of Wind Energy survey, we have 302 gigawatts of energy production at a hub height of 100 meters, right? And reassessment of onshore wind energy potential is done by Wind Force Management Services and the others as well, right? Whatever the others, you can read them. Wind Force Management Services Private Limited, Center for Study of Science, Technology and Policy, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. These three have done a reassessment of the wind energy potential of India. And as per the standards, they estimated nearly 10 gigawatts of solar wind hybrid potential was there and is high potential. As per their information, at a hub height of 100 meters, we can generate a wind potential of about 2,789 gigawatts, right? So 2,700 and 2,161, and at a club height of 120 meters height, and we can generate about 3,000 gigawatts, right? Depending upon the institute, depending upon the different survey. So we have more than 2,000 in any way. At a club height of 100 and 120, as per the estimates, it is nearing to 3,000, and here it is nearing to 2,200 and 2,500. This is the huge potential of wind energy that can be generated, right? So this was the advanced stats, right? This was the present stats. This is the huge amount of wind energy that can be generated in India at a club height of 100 or 120, right? And further research is yet to be done. So we'll have to wait because the wind energy potential is still not up to the mark in India, because we have seen the renewable energy capacity. The more amount of renewable energy is generated only through the hydel and solar, only through solar and hydel energy. Through wind, there is a less energy that is being generated so far, but we have a huge potential which was totally untapped. And the report also estimates nearly 10 gigawatts of solar wind hybrid potential was there, right? So wherever you're going for the solar energy, so you can establish wind mills as well. So you can, with the use of solar wind hybrid potential, we can generate about 10 gigawatts potential. We have a potential of 10 gigawatts generation, and there is a very high potential available on wasteland alone up to 1000 gigawatts. If you take only the wastelands into the consideration, which are barren totally, which are not being used for agrarian purposes, so if you plan to establish the solar panels over there, solar power plants over there, so you can go for wind as well, which can generate about 1000 gigawatts of hybrid electricity, hybrid energy. And India is likely to install 54.7 gigawatts of wind capacity by 2022 against 60 gigawatts target set by the government. Right? As per our targets, we are supposed to install 60 gigawatts of the wind energy, but India is likely to install 54.7 gigawatts of wind capacity by 2022. Yeah.
That is capable of 2000 gigawatts.
Yes.
And why only 50, 60?
Because one of the disadvantages of wind energy is huge capital. Right? We'll have to establish huge capital, and the maintenance costs are really high. So that's why the establishment of the wind energy resources is really costly process, and it takes time. Right? And it is still under research, because we have to there are still research is going on what material ought to be used, because when the wind is too force, obviously the windmills break. Right? They have to be strong and they have to be light as well. Right? So with the advanced technology, with the carbon nanotubes and all, with the advanced research on nanotechnology, we can develop the stronger and lighter materials, and with the use of that, we can generate furthermore higher electricity as well. Right? So for all those reasons, right, the wind energy potential is still in the preliminary stages compared to that of solar and hydro. Yeah. So the next one, important thing you have to note down is the 5 largest onshore wind farms in India. Right? So far, and please do remember one thing as well, we do not have any offshore wind farms in India. We do not have any offshore, because the constructing a windmill within the waters, within the Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea, it is very difficult, right? Onshore, it is furthermore costly. So we do not have any offshore wind farms in India. But please do remember these 5 largest onshore wind farms, right? First one is Muppandal wind farm, which has a capacity of 1500 megawatts, right? Where it is present, that is important, right? Where it is present, which is important. So it is actually present in Kanyakumari district, right? At the southern tip here. If this is Kanyakumari, it is actually present over here, right? It is the country's largest onshore wind farm, right? And it is developed by state-owned Tamil Nadu Energy Development Agency, and facility used by this is all not needed. So it is contributing to India's overall energy mix, that we already know, right? And the next one, Jaisalmer Wind Park. So obviously, when you talk about Jaisalmer, Rajasthan, right? So which has huge amount of wind energy potential. And next one, Brahmanvale. So Brahmanvale Wind Farm, right, which is in Maharashtra, right, which is developed by Parak Agro Industries. And the Maharashtra has the largest wind energy installed capacity in India after Tamil Nadu, which is 4098 megawatts. So this particular point also remember, huge amount of the wind energy is being generated by Tamil Nadu first and then the Maharashtra.
So in Kanyakumari, it was 1500.
Yes, sir, 1500.
Yes.
So it is 4098 megawatts.
No, I'm talking about total capacity that is being generated. So this one windmill is generating 1500, but in Tamil Nadu there are many windmills, wind plants. Ultimately, Tamil Nadu is the highest to produce the wind energy potential, wind energy for India. And then second place goes to Maharashtra, which in total it is generating 4098 megawatts. Okay. And the next one.
Just a minute, sir.
Yes.
That's
Yes. Brahmanvale is generating only 528. Brahmanvale is generating only 528, whereas Muppandal is generating 1500, right? But when you compare the states which are generating more amount of wind electricity, the first place goes to Tamil Nadu, second place goes to Maharashtra. And Dalgon wind farm, which is in Maharashtra again. And finally, Vankusawade wind plant, which is in Maharashtra again, right? So these are the 5 largest wind farms which are onshore wind farms, and we do not have any offshore wind farms so far. Okay, and we do not even have tidal energy potential as well. Even though we have huge amount of tidal energy, we are not generating any, right? Because of high costly, and the research is in the most fundamental way, right? Still the research is going on for generating what is sustainable the tidal energy as well. So now we have to discuss about the advantages and disadvantages of onshore as well as the offshore, right? Because we do not have any offshore potential, I did not put any slide, right? So we have to understand the disadvantages and advantages. We'll see. For onshore wind energy, advantages: the cost of establishing onshore wind farms is relatively cheaper than offshore. Relatively cheaper than offshore, we know that, because constructing a wind farm within the waters is very difficult, right? And since the wind farm is closer to the consumers, the voltage drops are less, right? Onshore means on the land only, right? So the transmission losses are very less, so it will be cheaper. But if you are establishing within the waters, so obviously the inhabitants are very far away, and the transmission losses are high, and also for transmitting that long distances, the cost will actually increase, right? That is one of the advantages for the onshore wind energy. And onshore wind turbines are easily installed, unlike nuclear power plants, right? So nuclear power plants, establishment of a nuclear power plants takes 10 decades of time, right? For decades of time. Whereas windmill, just bring the equipment, just fit it, right? It is relatively easier, right? So these are the advantages of onshore wind energy. So what are the disadvantages? Right? They are not high energy efficient because of physical blockage by buildings or hills. Because the wind energy will not be consistent, right? With the blockage, so obviously we will not have that consistent wind energy, and they are not high energy efficient as well, right? And noise created by the turbines can create disturbance to human and wildlife. The sound pollution, right? So the sound pollution or the sonic, right? The sonic disturbances will create many problems for the animals or the wildlife. And the land acquisition, one of the main reasons. And land acquisition is a problem not just for wind energy, even for solar energy, right? Even for hydro energy, right? Land acquisition is a huge problem for us, right? If you are establishing a larger dams, so obviously you will have to go for land acquisition and divert the water, and you have to rehabilitate the people, right? That is a huge problem here.
For
So
windmills, we don't require a large amount of land. For windmills.
you will not be establishing only one windmill there. That will not be efficient. You have to establish a wind plant. So you need a larger area, and you cannot really establish them side by side like your friends are sitting, right? You have to maintain some minimal distance, right? The wind farms we have to establish, not just windmills, right? So that's why the land acquisition is one of the problem. And huge negative impact on avian biodiversity. We have seen this consistently because of continuous rotating blades, right? Many birds are actually dying because they were moving into the blades, right? The many avian species are actually dying, and many migratory birds are actually dying because of these windmills, right? These are the disadvantages. And finally, the offshore wind energy. What are the advantages of offshore wind energy? The larger and taller windmills can be installed. Yes, someone said something.
Sir, previous slide, sir.
Yes, previous slide.
Previous slide.
Okay, okay. Tell me once you finished, Bapu.
Sir. Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, last point, please repeat, sir.
Last point, avian
Sir.
biodiversity.
Sir.
So we have discussed when we were talking about environment and ecology that India is a hub for many of the migratory species, right? Many birds are migrating to India for breeding season, for breeding. So because of the windmills that were being established, many migratory species are actually dying, and many the indigenous species are dying because they are being pulled into the blades. Because of rotating blades, they are dying. They are being hit and they are dying, right? So have you seen any bird which actually entered into the home because the fan is on? They'll hit the fan and they'll die, right? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the same way. So it is impacting the avian biodiversity. That means the birds are dying because of windmills. Okay.
Okay, sir.
And the next one for offshore wind energy, right? For the offshore wind energy, the larger and taller windmills can be installed in the offshore, right? We do not have any restriction, right? So the larger and taller windmills can be installed offshore, and as they are installed in the domestic sea waters in the exclusive economic region, the larger wind farms can be established because we have the complete control over the territorial waters, domestic waters, as well as exclusive economic zone, right? We can use for the commercial aspects. So because of this, we can, there is no point, there is no question of land acquisition there. We have larger areas, right? So we can establish how big the wind farm that may be. So there is no problem of land acquisition, and wind movement will be plenty without physical obstruction, right? Wind movement will be plenty. We do not have any issues. No one will actually stop the air in between. And wind farms can be established in the no fishing regions without disrupting aquatic ecosystem, right? If you're establishing them again in the aquatic ecosystem, that is a big problem for the biodiversity, aquatic biodiversity. Now what we are doing, we are establishing in the no fishing regions. And offshore turbines are highly efficient compared to that of the onshore wind turbines. So when we are talking about energy efficiency, so they can utilize whatever the wind energy that is coming, so they can use complete energy, right? So the offshore turbines are high efficient compared to that of the onshore wind turbines. Those are the advantages. But what are the disadvantages? They are very expensive and takes long time to build and difficult to maintain, right? This is the main problem. They are expensive, takes long time, and difficult to maintain. The waves and high winds during cyclones can damage farms, right? The waves and high winds due to cyclones can damage obviously the farms, right? You know, during the cyclones, especially because of the tropical cyclones, right? The waves are really huge, right? So because of these issues, they might damage the wind farms, and transmission of electricity back to the land is really expensive, right? You have to transfer longer distances through the waters. So it is very expensive, which in turn increases the cost of electricity generated through wind farms, the offshore wind farms. These are the advantages and disadvantages of offshore wind energy. Bapu, you're writing or should I go to the next slide?
Sir, waiting, sir. Wait, sir. Sorry.
Okay, Bapu?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Don't write the entire sentence, by the way. Right?
No, no, no.
Only the points
Shortcut.
like,
Shortcut.
yeah, expensive,
That
takes
point.
long time, the high, the waves, damage farms, the transmission expensive. In that way, you write running notes. No need to write entire sentences.